Hi, this is Sam Lagana with the Los Angeles Rams. Whose house? You're listening to the Los Angeles Rams UK podcast. Undenied worldwide. The Los Angeles Rams. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's go Rams!
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the LA Rams UK podcast, episode 89, Out in the Cold. I'm John and joined as always is Andy. Andy, how's it going, mate?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. How are you?
Not bad. We do have some positivity for once to talk about on the podcast. Seeing as we unfortunately couldn't get an episode out last week, we've got a win to talk about.
Yeah. So fortunately we couldn't get an episode last week. Real life came and sort of disrupted everything. So we'll get them both out this week, and we have a bit of positivity and a bit of negativity as usual. But I think we'll start with the positive stuff. I think.
Yep, let's start with the positive. The Week 14 win over the Raiders in SoFi, 17-16 to the Rams. Our first win since we beat the Panthers pre-bye week. Feels weird having won a game, doesn't it, Andy?
It does, yeah. And it was the manner of the win more than anything else. That 2-minute drive from Mayfield was, that was sort of, hate to say it, almost Stafford-esque, of how, we expect Stafford to be able to keep us in games, and he just came in and, for a guy that had been in the building, 36 hours,
yep.
I thought he played pretty damn well for us, to be honest.
Yep, we're talking about a quarterback who he'd been given the playbook pre-boarding in Carolina and had only basically the flight to study it, and then he was off the plane, straight to the facility and straight into practice. And I think he said he only got something like maybe about 20 throws to, receivers and tight ends and whatnot. So, I'd say it speaks volumes for the type of player that Mayfield is, that he literally could come in out of the cold and, produce that. I mean, up until the last drive, he wasn't amazing, but let's be honest, the guy just more or less came off the plane, like you said, barely been there 36 hours. I don't think anyone was expecting a lot out of him out of that game. Would you think, Andy?
Yeah, exactly. I was expecting, it was going to be maybe a close game, but, I was expecting more to be, we'll just have to run this game. And, that was it. I wasn't expecting much out of Mayfield. To be honest, I was almost, when they said that, that he was going to start, so it was like, oh, okay, well, but he looked better than what we've had with Wolford and Perkins, which was good. The guy was a number one pick, as I've previously said, the guy was a number one pick for a reason. There is the talent there. It's just a case. And I suppose, luckily, because of the teams he's been with, Kevin Stefanski ran a similar offense to what we run, as in, it's maybe not the play call and, verbiage and how they say it, but the scheme is pretty similar. So, I know he did say that coming into a similar scheme, although the calling was different word and everything else, the fact that it's similar scheme, maybe did help a little bit, because he could go, oh yeah, that is that. And that's what I used to call it in Cleveland. So he could just sort of translate it maybe a little bit easier in his head to be able to get it going. But, you could see there was a few off throws and, he wasn't quite on the same timing. But when he needed to, he just got that ball moving brilliantly. And, it was a decent game from him for what we expected.
Yeah, like you said, it's totally different for the kind of quarterback that Wolford is. Wolford came out in the first drive, obviously, and did nothing, and then we didn't see him the rest of the game. But Mayfield's, considering the guy, he's not played in weeks. He was quite mobile. He wasn't afraid to scramble for yards and that, and he made a few good passes. There was a good pass he made during the game. I forget what part of the game it was in, where he was scrambling left and he's right-handed and he's actually like off step, throwing it with his right hand, and makes the play. Like, it was, considering, like I said, how like he's came in out of nowhere. He's been cold sitting on benches. He did a far better job than Perkins or Wilford could have done. And at the end of the day, he got us the win. When we had the Seahawks game, we did ask the question, if we had Mayfield in for that game, would we have won that game? And we felt yes. It's good to see that he was able to go out and win us the game, because, like, I know there was some penalties in that final drive, but it's essentially 98 yards we've went, regardless of penalties. He's taken us down the field and got us the win.
Yeah,
Especially when the Raiders, were like giving it like the big one from that punt, thinking, oh, it's landed at 2, that's it, game's over.
yeah, it was a lack of discipline on the Raiders side. It wasn't as if it was ticky-tacky penalties where you could go, we maybe shouldn't have got that. They were clear penalties to us, knocking the ball out of his hand, for example. It wasn't, so there were justified penalties. As you say, it just felt like, what? Like I said, it almost felt Stafford-esque. We needed that 2-minute drive at the end, and that was sort of, it was almost like the will of Stafford to basically you go and do this and get this done for us.
Yep, we did wonder, like, going into this game, who was kind of probably going to be the receiver he was going to link up with the most. It actually turned out to be Benny Sko. In the end, he went 7 for 90 yards, which I think is possibly his highest yardage in a game so far.
Yeah, I think so.
I did come away from the game and says, well, there's our shake and bake.
Yeah, exactly, mate. He did, but he did spread it around as well. Look at the stats. You had Atwell with 5 catches, Van Jefferson got a couple. Malcolm Brown, Tyler Higbee actually managed to catch a ball. I think it's the first time I've managed to see him catch it for a long time. He seems to always drop them lately.
Yep.
So he did get it round, and overall, it was a gritty game, but we came out with the win, and there was some things I felt that gave you sort of a little bit of hope coming forward for the rest of the season with the team, that maybe we can sneak wins here or there with him, in the backfield, and maybe we can keep him, see if maybe we can keep him, even though, Stafford apparently is coming back, but maybe keeping him as a number 2 behind, if we can, maybe a good thing for the team. That's just as that insurance policy.
Well, I think we talked about it the other week where we said that Mayfield could come into this situation thinking, well, Stafford's going to probably go in a couple of seasons' time. I could sit here if Stafford's likely to carry injuries, get banged up. I'm good to go. He wanted out of Carolina because he was dropped to number 3. That's why he wanted out. So, and from his position, he is, like you said, he's a former number 1 pick. He's not been in the league that long. So he's quite within his right to be like, nah, I'm not going to sit and be 3rd man here. No way. So it's one of the ones he could become in a situation thinking that, if they can offer me a good enough contract to be back up, I'll sit and be back up, because I know if he gets hit, I'm good to step up and I can perform. Worst case scenario, we don't re-sign him when we get a compensating pick for him. So it's not a bad thing. We're not going to lose out of this, is what I'm saying. Yeah. We could hopefully get another couple of wee wins here in the last couple of weeks, and he could get a good run out. It could give us a good run out to see what we've got there, like in the receiving core. Like, Atwell's been getting more involved in games, and a lot of people are now kind of seem to kind of changing their opinions. Not to say he's a great receiver, but like people are like, well, I want to see more now with Atwell, because we're starting to see some glimmer of the kind of hype that we've had around him. So it's good to see him getting more involved in games. But just flipping over to the defense, that was a really good defensive performance against the Raiders as well, when you think about it, because they were like 13-3 up, by like before the half. For the defense to essentially hold them at 3 points for more than half the game is great, isn't it? Doesn't matter what team you're against.
Yeah, no, again, the defense stepped up, did the job when they had to, considering, that the players, again, as we say, we had, as much as we're talking about the offense struggling, the defense is now struggling with a lot of injuries, and they did step up. The only thing, to be honest, that, should we say, was worrying for me was the fact that Ramsey, yet again, was Devontae Adams just had his number all day. He didn't seem to be able to, at the battle between the two, it felt like, Adams had more on Ramsey, but for everybody else, we had players, again, step in that maybe, were fighting for those roster spots for next year and are sort of giving themselves little auditions to basically say, keep me around for another year, and maybe give them cheap contracts and just give them a chance.
Yeah. One thing I'm annoyed about the Raiders game is, whilst watching it, I learned how to pronounce hurt his name.
Right.
I heard it and I said, that's how to say it, and I remembered it and I kept repeating it myself and I've forgotten it already. Because
Yeah,
I
I don't
remember like the
remember.
other week the twos are like, it seems like as if we're trying like I've got phlegm caught in my
Yeah,
throat.
exactly.
I feel bad for the guy, but and I'm annoyed because like that's how to say his name perfect. But the for me the big defensive performance of one thing, sorry, I forgot to mention, is that Baker Mayfield was obviously named NFC Offensive Player of the Week, and it was fully deserved. But one guy who deserves a bit more recognition, and we've talked about him a couple of times, he picked up a total of 14 combined tackles and was graded as the best linebacker in week 14 in the league, Bobby Wagner.
Yeah, he's just Mr. Solid, to be honest, for us. He's PFF, I think in PFF throughout the whole season, he's the number one linebacker all year long. And he has come in and he's just done his job.
Yep.
The problem I think for linebackers, especially for his position as a middle linebacker, is when you do your job, you're not noticed.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just get on with it. You're not getting the sacks that your edge players and Aaron Donald get. It's just a case of you're there doing your job, and it's sort of one of those unsung positions that the only time you really get noticed is when you're doing bad and you're making mistakes, because they'll focus on that part. But when you're doing your job, nobody really pays much attention. But he has, I think throughout the whole season, to be honest, he's probably been probably our best player all season, to be honest.
He
Certainly the
has
most
been Mr.
consistent. Yeah.
Yep, I was going to say that he has been a Mr. Consistent for us this year.
Yeah.
He is definitely. It's maybe hard to say that there's like a to try and pick who have been like our best players this year, because most of them are injured. So like guys that you would probably say, this guy has been good or whatever, they're gone. But as Wagner's one of the few guys that's been out there every week for us pretty much, and he's been putting up the numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's been many weeks where he's not put up even like solid numbers. But when you've got like 14 combined tackles in this Raiders game, like it's like especially like it's a lot for one guy. Usually it's single digits. The combined tackles for most guys.
Yeah.
But for me, like I think I said this a few weeks ago, if I remember right, that he doesn't get the credit he deserves. And we'll come on to the Pro Bowl roster talk and that later on. But just before we then move on to the Packers game, is there anything else from the Raiders game that stood out for you, Andy?
No, it's just obviously a couple of really nice interceptions. Taylor Rapp, Ernest Jones. Nice to see them. Doing what we want them to do. And Matt Gay is just, he missed one field goal, but I feel throughout the season, him and Riley Dixon on our special teams, that they've just felt really solid all year and have done, a really good job for us.
Yep, Matt Gay's been absolute solid for us, like since he's came in to the, the team. But like, I think a lot of people are like starting to say the league are sleeping on him as a kicker. Like saying why is he not getting the recognition elsewhere? The guy has a leg on him. As we talk, we're going to talk about it in the Packers game. I think he's one of only a few guys who's kicked for over 50 yards in December in the cold in Green Bay. The guy could kick for miles if he hits it right. We've seen that. There's been kicks where I think there was the one recently, I'm sure, that came up. In fact, there was a Raiders game, and I don't know if it was Prime Video had got the start wrong, but it came up, flashed up on the screen, 61 yards. The guy could kick it from his own half and make it.
Yeah, no, he does have a really good leg on him, and even like I say, even Riley Dixon, I was very thinking, like I said, I think I was quite vocal at the beginning of the season. Why the heck have we kept him? I don't rate him as a punter. He's not very good. I'd rather kept, Dicker around out the two of them. But he's quietly impressed me this year because of how well, he's done. He's consistent. It just feels like, I think Hecker's gone, and he's just a nice, easy replacement that's just come straight in and carried on where Hecker pretty much left off. And to be honest, this year probably been a lot better than Hecker would have been, because unfortunately he was starting to drop off, and I think we could see that last year.
Yep. Well, that's obviously why we moved him on as well. But so moving on now to we've talked about positivity. Guess we're going to try and avoid going back there. Here it is, obviously, this week, Monday Night Football. We went to Green Bay once again in the winter and came away with another loss, 24-12 against the Packers. Let's be honest, Todo, Andy, going at this one, we didn't expect anything out of this. It's Green Bay in December. I think it was -9. I think the actual temperature was 11 degrees, they said, on the broadcast, and I think that's about -9.
Something like that, yeah. Too cold for me, let's just put it that way.
I mean, well, I had -10 last week or last Wednesday up here, and
same down here.
It's weird, right? Because we had that extreme cold, right? And it did actually make me think about, like, when I was going out and doing a school run, and I'm like, oh, God, -9, -10. Like, I've got my layers up here, and I'm like, how the hell can you play football in this? Like, and they play, it's just normal. Like, it's been years since I've experienced cold like that here in Scotland. Don't know about yourself, Andy, but like, it was one of the ones that a rare chance you can think, well, like, say, like Green Bay especially, right? Like, we see the Bills, in Buffalo, like the heavy snow and all that, but like Green Bay, you see a bit of snow, but it's just like an ice bowl, really, I guess. And how can you play in that?
Well, what makes me laugh is the fact that they'll just stay there and with just the jerseys on. They don't put any layers on. It's just like, and they'll sit on the bench for 5-10 minutes in this freezing. I'm looking at them going, I'm freezing just looking at you. Let alone how are you on there?
It's the guys in the stand have got no taps on. I don't understand that, man. Why are you not blue?
I think that's probably more the alcohol keeps them warm.
Yes, of course it would. But,
yeah.
Anyways, so it's Green Bay in the colds. When I looked at the predictions for that, had on this. I think everyone was like, "Yeah, we're gonna lose. We're always losing Green Bay," and lo and behold, again a loss. But it didn't feel as bad a loss as our previous visits there. And I don't know if that's maybe because the Packers themselves aren't doing too well, but the one thing like I took from the game is in previous visits there, one of the things that's always frustrating me is we can never get to Rodgers or we can never pick him off. We sacked him a few times, we picked him off a couple of times. So for me, I'm taking that as a win. Like it's nice to just get to him because Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, but he's not as open to punishment from other teams as other quarterbacks are. Like Tom Brady can get knocked about like senseless, and annoyingly can still be great. But Rodgers is in past visits to Green Bay. It's frustrating because we can't get to him, but we did this week, which I really liked despite the loss.
Yeah, exactly. Getting them a few hits here and there. And it's nice to see Leonard Floyd have a bit of a decent game again. Wish he'd be a little bit more consistent personally, but for what we're paying him, as I've said before, but it was nice to actually see him get fired up that little bit more. And it's just like you said, it's one of them games, mate. It's just absolutely horrible and trying to throw.
Yeah,
we are, a sunshine team. We're guaranteed sunshine pretty much all year round where we are. So going to Green Bay must be horrific at the best of times.
We were only 12 for 111 yards in the air.
Yeah.
Akers went 12 for 65 on the ground. Akers was also our leading receiver with 35 yards.
Yeah,
just as you mentioned, Higbee as well from the previous game, he was 4 for 27 and got our only touchdown in the game, and it's his first this year, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much.
So, but Akers, leading rusher, 65 yards isn't amazing, but like I guess it is for him with his performances, but also leading, receiver. He got 100 yards overall in the game, so he did well, but it's one of those ones,
abandoned the running backs. Yeah, the things with running backs is you just don't look at the totals. It's more like what they're averaging. I mean, he averaged 5.4 yards, and I think the average is if your running back can average 4 yards a carry, that's what is the minimum expectation. So he was above the expectation, of what his carry should be. Which he does seem to be coming back into his own a little bit, and I suppose it opens up questions of next year. Do we maybe keeping him around and see if he's got that motivation to stick around and maybe put it all together? It seems like him and McVay have managed to figure a few things out, and it's an interesting conundrum for the off season of should we maybe keep him around and see what he can do.
It was one of those ones with Kyron Williams coming into the kind of folds. I expected him to be getting a lot more kind of, handoffs and snaps or what, but it doesn't seem to have worked out that way. Like, I mean, I suppose Akers is getting his fair share of them. He is our first. He's RB1, I guess. So you'd expect that, and if he's want to move on and we want to move on from, we're trying to put him in the shop window. I'm not really sure how many teams will want to still take him. I mean, they'll maybe take him as a backup option or whatever, I guess. But it's one of those ones though. Like we could have consider we're not going to air it out in Green Bay with the cold and all that. Like this is where it's frustrating with McVay with abandoning the run game, because it's a game where we would, if we had the likes of like Steven Jackson, for example, or even Todd Gurley, even banged up, we would have chummed up the yards on the ground on Monday night there.
Yeah, I suppose as well, though, as I've said before, with that O-line, with the run behind, it's difficult because they're not getting them the pushes and the gaps that they probably need to be able to get those extra yards. But I think with Kyron Williams, the problem, and this is something I've always said with McVay, he doesn't seem to want to play his rookies. He doesn't seem to want to give his rookies a chance. We've seen this time and time again. You look at Van Jefferson when he came into the, his first year, he barely got any he barely got touches because he didn't want to play him. He's done the same with Kyron Williams. We've had linemen, that have come in, and if he's not bothered to play them day one. We've had players in the past, even Tutu Atwell, it's took him 2 years before he's managed to, finally be allowed to sort of show what he can do a little bit.
And sadly, that's probably down to injuries as well, because I believe that Benny Skull is now out for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, he's out with, I think it's a knee injury, isn't it?
Yeah, so another injury to the wide receiving core. So I think you've got Atwell's now wide receiver 1, Powell's wide receiver 2. I think we brought a couple of guys into the practice squads tonight.
Yeah,
it's also just beef up.
Yeah, Lance McCutcheon's come back to the practice squad, and there is some guy I've never heard of before. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. I've never even heard of him before, so I think we're just at the point now where it's
filling gaps just till we get to the end of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just basically now push through, get through to the end of the year almost, and just write this season off as what could have been if we kept healthy. So, we every team has it at some point, and it's just unfortunately our year where the injury bug has come and sat in the locker room and just stayed there all year. It hasn't decided to go away. We've been lucky for the past number of years that we've had injuries, but not to the extent that we've had this year.
Well, that's I seen. I don't know. It was the bus score, the banged up score, for the whole league, and it told you kind of like essentially the percentage of your roster that is, I think it was, available to play, and we were. I can't remember if we were third or fourth. We were definitely top 5 in terms of injuries. There was only something like, I think it was like 55% of our roster was injured, pretty much. And I think it was the Broncos, the Chargers, and it might have been someone else were ahead of us. But yeah, like, it's just one of those years. Like, we've talked to this before, where we've said that it's just sod's luck, I guess, really, that it's fell on us this year.
Yeah, it's just
sod's luck. An injury bug.
It was our. Unfortunately, you do tend to find the league. It is our year. Teams will have that year where they just, and it is our year. It's just luckily it's this year and not last year when we needed to keep everybody fit and healthy. And I wonder sometimes maybe because we did play so a bit later in the season than most teams, if maybe that has a knock-on effect for the next year. That the players haven't had as much rest as maybe they normally would, which could affect players as well.
Yep.
But it is what it is. We'll just, write this year off as a blip and, look forward to next year, and hopefully we can maybe get back to some sort of, contention again. Maybe a lot healthier than we have been.
Fingers crossed. Like you'd mentioned, Stafford has basically came back and he said that he's not retiring. It was actually on Kelly's podcast. I don't know if you heard the audio of it, Andy. But
Yeah.
she if anyone hasn't, it went like this. So I'm not going to put a woman's voice here, but Kelly basically says that there's this talk about your return. Are you going to retire? No, straight in there, no hesitation, and you can tell the tone of his voice as if I'm sick of being asked this question, and the way Kelly's went on, she's been quite open. She's his wife, so she's going out. She's entitled to valid opinions, how she feels, and all that. And don't I disagree with her whatsoever with that. But as a Rams fan, I do disagree with her because I want my quarterback back next year. But it's one of those ones. Hopefully, he didn't put himself in the doghouse with the way he responded and the tone that he took when she asked him, because she was like, "Yeah, all right then, okay." As if I better move on. I'm going to get nothing out of you. You made it clear you don't want to talk about this. But like you said, we'll just have to see what happens when we kind of come back next year. So just moving on, just quickly. So the Pro Bowl got announced and Aaron Donald makes it 9 in a row, which is quite surprising considering he's not had what I wouldn't say he's had a bad year, but he's not had his usual kind of great seasons. But for me, the main one is Wagner not getting a shout. Do you think Wagner should have been in, Andy?
Yeah, I'm really surprised that Wagner didn't get a vote, to be honest, and get in there. I think it's ridiculous. How can you be? I know some people get a little bit funky with PFF scores, but he's the best linebacker in the league, and yet he doesn't get a chance to go in. I just don't understand it. And I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, how Matt Gay didn't get a chance. I don't know either. You're telling me the Seahawks kicker's a better kicker than he is? I don't think so.
It's let's be honest, the Pro Bowl is just a popularity contest. It's not. You don't get there on merit. You don't get there because your peers vote you to be there. Which, to be honest, I don't understand why the Pro Bowl isn't voted like that. Because in other sports, I suppose at the end of the year awards, the players get to vote. So why shouldn't they have a say? I came up against this guy. This guy was amazing, man. Why is he not there? I feel like it should be more peer rather than just people going in. I'm gonna just retweet and vote for my players because I want my guys in. Guys like Wagner who have been absolutely solid and rated so highly all year at the position don't get looking. I mean, don't get me wrong. When it comes to also the playoffs, and we get to the Super Bowl, we actually come to the Pro Bowl. There's the likelihood that he's going to get in, but I mean, he should be in from the off, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, he should be the number one guy straight on that from day one. To be honest, he should have been the first name on that list, and just makes you wonder because I hate to say this about Aaron Donald, but he hasn't been the same player this year, and how he's got in, I don't know. Obviously, it must just be his name's gotten back in because I don't think he's done as well as people expect him this year. I know he's had injuries and that, but he's not seemed like the same player that we would normally expect either. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Just doing a test here. Can you hear me, mate? Because I've just had some technical issues which I have to apologise for.
Yeah, mate. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Sorry about that, folks. My work laptop decided to cut out on me there, so I'm going mobile for the rest of it. So fingers crossed now that my phone doesn't cut out. I like just before I got cut off there, just as saying, it's likely that Wagner will probably get in when it comes down to the actual, when we get to the Super Bowl. But for me, he really should have been in from the start. But I mean, it's great to see Aaron Donald in there. Like you were mentioning, Andy, Matt Gay should be in there as well. I don't understand why. I feel like the league are sleeping on Matt Gay because the guy's got a leg on him. Granted he missed an extra point there against the Packers, but the guy can hit it probably from clearly comfortably in his own half if he hits it right. I mean, there's times where we've said he could probably go about 70 yards if he really wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the guy is pretty much a clutch automatic, you know, and yeah, every kicker will miss the odd occasional one, especially, you know, like you say Green Bay in the cold, you know, but sometimes it's not the kicker's fault. It's sometimes down to the holder. You know, the ball doesn't get snapped perfectly, it doesn't get held and put the perfect angle, and it can throw the whole thing off, you know. So, yeah, I don't understand it. But like I was saying, I don't understand personally how Aaron Donald got in because I don't think he's done as well as we expect this year. And, you know, obviously, it clearly proves that it's a bit of a popularity vote because I do think there's been better players than him this year. But, you know,
Yeah.
happy for the guy that he still got in, you know, when he keeps that record of, you know, 9 in a row. But like you say, for Wagner and Matt Gay to be snubbed was just like, what are you guys doing? You know, do you watch the same games that everybody else does?
That's right, yeah. See just on Aaron Donald there, because it's a mystery. Like, he's currently injured, but they've not put him in IR. Like, so if Donald doesn't play the rest of the year and he can't participate in this game, does it still counts that he's in the Pro Bowl even if he's injured, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's basically the same, you know. Yeah, we've had it before where players, you know, have got injured in the final week and not been able. Once you've selected, just name selected, and that's it. You can't be deselected from it unless for disciplinary reasons is the only way. So
Yeah.
he'd still be a Pro Bowl player regardless. He just wouldn't be able to play the game, you know. And
With the Pro Bowl, it's obviously changing this year. That it's no longer an actual contact game. It's now 7-on-7 flag football. I mean, which like I like watching flag football. There's a team locally where I stay, and I've taken the kids to go watch them, and they quite enjoyed it. Like flag football, yeah, it is what it is. It could be quite interesting. Maybe I don't know if you'll remember. Do you remember the video game NFL Street? Don't know
yeah,
if what we see is like it'll essentially be real life that. Which if it is, that would be pretty cool to watch, I guess. But I seen it was on the NFL TikTok the other day, and it's only like 10-minute halves, so it's not even like a long game or anything.
no. To be honest, it's going to be better than what we get from the Pro Bowl game anyway, because the Pro Bowl game is just a joke. Because yeah, it's supposedly contact, but they don't touch each other hardly. You know, it's not anywhere near. And to be honest, I think having a flag game is actually better because it'll be more enjoyable than the, you know, the crock that is the Pro Bowl game. Because you know, it's sort of it wasn't the same. It's, you know, they don't touch each other. They barely look at each other. The quarterbacks. So it's more like a training camp game because you can't even touch the quarterbacks. You know, nobody will touch the quarterback or sack them. They'll sort of tap them and that's your lot. It's a sack. You know, it was getting to be a bit of a farce, to be honest, the games, and I'm glad that they have, you know, realised that and, you know, changed the format and made it a bit more, probably a bit more enjoyable for the players as well, to be honest, because, you know, I think you could see last year with Micah Parsons, you know, he was trying so hard. He wanted to smack the quarterbacks because that's just what he just likes to get physical. You know, there was a few ones that you kind of looking and going, that's not the spirit of the game, you know, and maybe with a flag game, it's going to be a bit more enjoyable because at least, you know, it's a bit more athletic and there's still, you know, it's just something different for them as well from what they used to.
Yeah. It'll definitely be interesting to watch, and obviously I think they're going to have more games. Like remember you used to always see like the clips in the week run up to Pro Bowl. When it used to be in Hawaii, you see like the quarterbacks, you know, doing like the kind of like the essentially the arm drills they used to call them, like, you know, where they see who can throw it the longest and whatnot. Like I think there's going to be more emphasis and stuff like that, which is good as well because like you said, it'll make it a bit. It's more entertaining, more fun to watch, more interesting because I can't. Honestly, I can't tell you the last time I actually watched the Pro Bowl. Whereas this year, I'm going to watch it because I'm interested to see the change that they've made now. Like you said, it's maybe a bit more fun for the players as well to be part of.
Yeah, no, exactly. It should be a little bit more fun for the players. And yeah, I must admit, I don't tend to. If I've got nothing else to do, I'll watch the Pro Bowl game. But I'd prefer to watch, like you say, the skills challenges. You know, the dodgeball and the catch stuff and that you know they do. That to me is more fun and more enjoyable than the actual Pro Bowl game.
Yep. And so moving on, just before we've got one question that came in just before I move on to the update in the Rams World Cup. And I'll just mention it just
we're not answering the question, but we're just acknowledging the question. It came in from David Posey. He asked it last week and then he updated it this week, and it was basically just what's our thoughts on the way the Rams attack next year. Let's say, thanks for the question, David. We're not answering it now because when it comes to the off season, we'll have like a kind of end of year review, and then we'll kind of like, well, this is what we're looking for going forward. This kind of question will get properly answered then, with our thoughts with how the off season is going to go and what we do coming back next year. But thanks for saying in, Dave. You'll get a proper answer when it comes to the end of the season.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just a case of, I think, as we said before, we'll have to see what happens in the end of the season, see what transcribes with players and everything else, and then maybe we'll have a better idea from there as to what we can, what this team's outlook is likely to be.
Yep. So that's that. And so, moving on to the Rams World Cups, obviously, we had the quarter-final voting on social media a couple of weeks ago. And it was no surprise, to be honest with you, apart from one game which we got into. So we had the Super Bowl win over the Bengals progressed, the NFC title win over the 49ers progressed, the Monday Night Football game against the Chiefs progressed, and then the last match was the NFC title game for the Saints against the last year's divisional round against the Buccaneers. Now, I was actually quite surprised because the Saints game lost, and it lost so the percentages, it won on Twitter, but the divisional game for the Buccaneers won on Facebook. It was the other way. No, it was the other way around. The Buccaneers game won on Twitter, Saints game won on Facebook. So it was technically a draw, but there was no clear winner. So I had to actually drill it down and check the overall votes, and the divisional round, the Buccaneers game won by like 3 votes. I think it was like something like 19 to 15 or something like that it was. So it was a bit of a shock that the NFC title game against the Saints didn't make it to the semi-finals, which were up on social media today. And we had people voting in. So the Bengals Super Bowl win took on the NFC title match from last year, and then the Monday night game against the Chiefs took on last year's divisional round against the Bucks. Whilst I was working, I was keeping an eye on the votes, Andy, and I thought we were going to get an upset because very early on, the NFC title game against the 49ers took a lead over the Super Bowl and held it for a couple of hours.
Yeah, right.
It was like sitting at like 60-40 in favour of the 49ers game for a few hours, but the Bengals game had hoped obviously was going to overtake it because it's a Super Bowl win. So sadly, the 49ers titles game lost out and the Bengals Super Bowl win progressed. And then the other game, it should come as no surprise that the Monday Night Football game, the Chiefs, it was like 75-25% in favour of the Chiefs game. So that means that this week coming up, our third place playoff will be the NFC title game of the 49ers against the divisional round of the Buccaneers to decide who finishes in third place. And then the following year is our Rams World Cup final, which for me, this was the final that I'd actually predicted. I don't know about you, Andy, but the Super Bowl win against the Monday Night Football Chiefs game. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and we did allude to think ourselves off the air that this was likely going to be the final. A few guys have said on Twitter, replying to our posts, like, they'll be shocked if the Super Bowl doesn't win it. Now, here's the thing, folks. That's when this vote goes up in the next week or so to do it. The gut reaction is it's the Super Bowl, it's a ring. But the question is, what are you really voting on here? Are you voting on the ring, or are you voting on what is arguably the greatest Monday night football game of all time? The shootout in LA against the Chiefs. Like, Jared Goff's crowning moment. Like, that was Jared Goff at his peak. Over 100 points scored in an NFL game. Monday Night Football under the lights. Like, actually showed the Chiefs Monday Night Football game to my then 5-year-olds last year and pretended it was the Super Bowl and he believed me.
Right.
Because I didn't want to show him the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So I showed him this, and he thought he was watching the Super Bowl when he thought the Rams beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Little did he know, a year later he'd been watching us actually win the Super Bowl. But because going into that game, I asked people online on Twitter, if I was going to show my son one game, what would I show him to portray it as the Super Bowl? And everyone told me, put the Chiefs game on.
Yeah.
You could show me any other game with absolute blow, but for him, for ages, that is gripping. It's an amazing game for a neutral. So for this one, it's like, is it the ring or is it the game? And for me, and I'm not saying this is how I'd vote, but like out of the two games, the Chiefs game is technically the better game, but the other game's a Super Bowl and it's a win. So I'm going to be really interested to see how the voting breaks down on this. Like I said, the general feel I'm getting from people who've commented is the expectation is the Super Bowl is going to win this, but it'll be interesting to see how this really breaks down. What's your thoughts on the final, Andy?
To be honest, I know which one I'm gonna be. I'd vote for, and it unfortunately isn't the Super Bowl. I think we're talking about the greatest game of all time for us, not the significance of the game. Yeah, the significance, we won the Super Bowl, but for me, this is about the best Rams game in the last 4 years, and this is the Chiefs game, hands down, has to be in terms of the best game, not just for Rams fans, but even neutrals were like, this is the game of this is the game of the decade,
That's
alone, and this was neutral fans basically saying that's the best game of football, attacking football I've ever seen in my life, and that I think what this World Cup, it was about the best game, not just the fact that obviously the Super Bowl's dear to our heart, and everybody's head's going to probably be swayed by the Super Bowl. But for me personally, the Chiefs would be my number one for that reason, because of the game, and it was it was one of them breathtaking games that, it's like a once in a generation sort of game.
That's that, and the whole, like you said, the whole point in this tournament and asking people to vote is for them to pick their favourite win. It's not necessarily to pick the significance of the game, it's the actual game itself. And like you said, your heart is say it's that you go for the ring, but is it not going to leave? Like, for anyone who votes in this, think it this way: like, if you're going to vote for the Super Bowl, vote for the Super Bowl. It's fine, but is it going to leave a bitter taste in your mouth that, like you said, Andy, one of the greatest games in the modern era is there? Like, I mean, it's one of the ones. If we didn't win the Super Bowl last year, I think everyone would be saying the Monday Night Football game against the Chiefs would be the winner of this tournament. Do you know what I mean?
Hands down, the number one winner. It wouldn't even be a competition. It would, it would just be that being everyone's top of the list.
So when you're voting, out of the two games, what was your favourite game to watch? Because we're celebrating not the significance, we're celebrating the win itself and the game itself. That's the idea. But if the Super Bowl wins, the Super Bowl wins. Just try to make sure that it's as even a playing field as possible here, because like I said, I'm excited to see how this breaks down when the voting closes. And that will be for like the final week of the season. So, go back, folks, watch the two games. I'm pretty sure you'd probably prefer to watch either one of these games than the games we've got coming up, especially that game against the Seahawks in the final week of the season, in Seattle. So go back, watch the games. But this week, it'll be the third place playoff, the NFC title games against the 49ers, against the Buccaneers. And we'll see next week how that one plays out. But apart from that...
Question on that one, the final. Yeah. If it comes to a 50-50 draw, we just declare them both the greatest games of all time.
No. See, this is where it's a grey area, right? Because we're talking about a sport that it's pretty difficult to end up in a tie. But we're using a tournament that was decided by shootout to declare a winner because a winner has to be declared. So if we have to draw lots, we'll have to draw lots. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. What we did with the Saints NFC title game in the box is we drilled down the votes across all platforms. Because every other game it was clear cut the winner, so there was no need to do that. Whereas with that game, I had to check what the individual votes were in Twitter and Facebook and total them up. So with the voting for the World Cup final, it'll be the exact same. The votes will be totalized. If it comes down that there is exact same for each of ones, then perhaps
we're not conspiring against you, John, by the way, to get everybody just to vote 50-50 and then make your life hell. Don't worry.
Aye, that's that. Aye, that's what people are going to go do. Like, people are going to try and manipulate the vote. That's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to vote until the very last minute and see if it is 50-50. It will be my vote that puts it over the line. So if it's 51-49, then you'll know it's me that's done it. Then.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, well, we'll cross that. To be honest, I have voted on every game we've had, and I have done it early to get my vote out of the way. So as soon as I've put the posts on social media, I've put my vote in straight away. To be honest with you, I will be doing the same here because, to be honest, I don't want that, the hassle and abuse I'll get if it's my vote that puts it over the line. So we'll see what happens, folks. It's one of those ones. If it does come to a tie, then perhaps we'll just have to declare that there is two winners. There can be ties in football, I guess.
Yeah, be a 1-1 draw, and everybody goes home happy.
That's it. But apart from that, is there anything else you'd like to add, Andy, before we wrap up?
No, not really, mate. Just obviously everybody out there who listens. Hope you have a nice Christmas holidays, however you celebrate, and have a good and healthy time. And we'll catch you again on the next one.
Yep, we will catch you guys next week, where we will talk about our Christmas Day battle against the Broncos. But for now, folks, thank you very much, Andy, for joining me as always, mate. I hope you and the family have a great Christmas.
Yep, thanks for having me on, and same to you and the family, mate. I hope you have a nice Christmas as well.
We will do, thanks. And to everyone out there, thank you so much for listening, folks. We will see you all. Merry Christmas and catch you next week.